On his way home, he was chased by a big dog. After half a year, he still couldn't let it go. After thinking for a long time, he decided to take revenge on the dog. He didn't hesitate and brought the material. He found the path that the dog often walked, so he sat on the ground and made a hole. For this, he studied the 3D hole for several months. The man was still full of confidence. After all, the ground must be the drawing paper. The basic knowledge of the man was still learned on the internet. This is a visual illusion, the creative art of the street, using simple colors on the two-dimensional plane. The visual effect of the three-dimensional abyss makes the flat ground seem to be flat and open, forming a three-dimensional deep pit that is hard to change. The core of this illusion is the precise control of perspective in light and shadow. The man should use the ground as a drawing paper and follow the perspective principle of the big and the small to draw the outline of the whole. Then through contrast between light and dark, the shadow changes, simulating the depth and three-dimensionality of the whole. The dark color draws the edges, the gray color overlaps the layers, and the white color embellishes the reflection, making the flat paint seem to be deep but not visible. The rough edge is the real pit. The ground is like a broken line, and the visual impact must be full. It was a visual illusion, a special kind of street art that tricks the human eye into seeing depth where there is none. This creative art form transforms ordinary flat surfaces into something extraordinary. Using simple colors and careful design, artists can turn a plain two-dimensional surface into something that looks three-dimensional. In this case, the man wanted the ground to look like a deep, dark pit. If done correctly, anyone looking at it from the right angle would feel like the ground had opened up into a massive abyss. The secret behind this illusion lies in precise control of perspective and light. First, the man used chalk to sketch the outline of the whole. He followed an important principle of perspective. Objects closer to the viewer appear larger, while objects farther away appear smaller. This principle allowed him to stretch and distort the drawing in a way that would only look correct from a specific viewing angle. Next came the colors. It was a visual illusion, a special kind of street art that tricks the human eye into seeing depth where there is none. This creative art form transforms ordinary flat surfaces into something extraordinary. Using simple colors and careful design, artists can turn a plain two-dimensional surface into something that looks three-dimensional. In this case, the man wanted the ground to look like a deep, dark pit. If done correctly, anyone looking at it from the right angle would feel like the ground had opened up into a massive abyss. The secret behind this illusion lies in precise control of perspective and light. First, the man used chalk to sketch the outline of the whole. He followed an important principle of perspective. Objects closer to the viewer appear larger, while objects farther away appear smaller. This principle allowed him to stretch and distort the drawing in a way that would only look correct from a specific viewing angle. Next came the colors. The visual impact was powerful. Standing at the right spot, it was almost impossible to believe the ground was actually flat. Anyone approaching would instinctively stop, because their brain would tell them one thing: there is a huge hole ahead. But in reality, there was nothing there. Just paint, just perspective, just art. The man stepped back and looked at his work. After months of study and hours of careful painting, the illusion was complete. He slowly begins to color the inside surface of the pit. First, he paints the inner walls with deep dark colors to create the feeling of depth. The darker the color, the deeper the pit appears. Then he adds layers of gray tones across the inner surface. These gray shades overlap each other, forming different layers that look like the rough walls inside a real hole. Each stroke is carefully blended so the transition between dark and light appears natural. After that, he starts adding shadows. The shadows stretch across the inner walls of the pit, creating curves and angles that make the whole look deeper and more realistic. The shadows make the pit appear as if sunlight is coming from above, while the inside slowly fades into darkness. The man carefully strengthens the darkest areas, near the bottom of the pit. This makes the center look extremely deep, almost like an endless abyss. Finally, he adds a few touches of white. These small white highlights simulate the reflection of light, hitting the inner surfaces of the pit. The contrast between white highlights, gray layers, and deep black shadows makes the illusion incredibly convincing. From a distance, the flat ground no longer looks flat. Instead, it looks like a dangerous deep hole that could swallow anything that steps near it. To make the illusion even stronger, he roughens the outer edges of the pit. The edge looks broken and uneven, just like cracked ground after a collapse. The ground appears to split apart like a jagged line, and the visual impact becomes extremely powerful. At the right viewing angle, it becomes almost impossible to tell that this is only paint. It looks like a real pit. Now there was only one thing left to do: wait. Sooner or later, the dog would walk down this path again. And when it did, would it be fooled by the illusion? Would it stop in fear, thinking the ground had disappeared beneath its feet? Or would it simply walk straight across, completely ignoring the trap? The man watched quietly from a distance, eager to see whether his creative revenge would work. Because sometimes, The most powerful tricks are not physical traps, but the ones that fool the mind. But to make it even more convincing, he decides to act. He slowly approaches the edge of the pit, and pretends to carefully jump over it, as if he is afraid of falling in. Anyone watching would immediately believe there is a real hole on the road. Soon the first reactions begin. Two bicyclists approach the road. As they get closer, they suddenly notice the huge pit in front of them. Both of them quickly stop, turn their bicycles around, and ride back the way they came. A scooter rider arrives next. The rider slows down, looks at the deep pit on the ground, and immediately decides not to risk it. The scooter also turns around and leaves. A woman then walks toward the road with her small child. The child runs a little ahead and almost steps into the pit. The mother quickly pulls the child back in fear. Shocked by what they see, both of them turn around and leave the area. After some time, the big dog finally appears on the same path. As it approaches the pit, the dog suddenly stops. It looks at the dark hole on the ground and hesitates. After sniffing the air for a moment, the dog decides not to cross it, and slowly walks back the other way. Not long after, a car approaches the road. The driver sees the massive pit blocking the path and immediately brakes. Another scooter arrives shortly after. Just like the others, the rider sees the hole and quickly turns back, completely fooled by the illusion. The man watches everything from a distance, smiling quietly. His artistic revenge has worked perfectly. Finally, after enjoying the results of his prank, he walks back to the drawing. He takes a bucket of water and pours it over the ground. Slowly, the colors begin to fade. The deep pit disappears. Within minutes, the road becomes flat and normal again,